Hello, welcome everyone. A special thank you and welcome to Claire and Teddy who are joining us from TLS. This session is really about remote teaching this fall for us to get back together again for the people who are already in their courses and thinking about maybe we have more specific questions than when we met back in June. We did certainly prepare material. I think Claire and Teddy plan to spend about the first hour providing some content and leaving a lot of room for questions at the end. We might go into breakout rooms. We might decide to stay all together if the big group is, if a lot of information is coming out at that time. So we'll see. It can be iterative, and because we're meeting again on August 20th, I think that kind of leaves it open that we can, the people who are here can work on things, and then if you're able to join us next week, that would be lovely too. And then Claire and Teddy are planning different content for next week. I'll let them tell you about their agenda, but maybe also a quick reminder that you're absolutely welcome to email myself or Amanda as representatives of TechCom, the school's technology committee, if you need support from us one-on-one. Of course, TLS is available too, but you know, we're all in this together, so never hesitate. Anything else to add, Amanda?
Nope, all good.
Well, thank you for being here for this special summer FacDev session. Thank you, everyone.
I guess I'll take it from here, Claire, and I'm going to share my screen. Let me just get to this here. It's my first desktop. I'll share. I'm going to move my Zoom window over here. Some notes. I have a few things happening on my desktop, but I'm trying to get everything sorted so that we're going to do a bit of a demo, but also start off with a presentation, I guess, style format. So I just want to double check. You guys can see the first slide of the PowerPoint. Okay, sounds good. All right. It just, I don't know if everybody had a chance to take a look at it, but we had a series of webinars in June and July. And if you had a chance to take a look at or view it, it talks a lot about different topics. And so today's session is kind of to continue past that. So I'm just pasting the links for the recordings and the resources that we have there. And I heard a little bit before the meeting that somebody was concerned about Zoom. We actually had a Zoom session, so how to do some interactivity with Zoom. There's items on polling at McGill. There's also more in depth about myCourses, so content, course management, student interaction and engagement, and assessment. Those were the big questions. Oh, and one more was peer assessment. So if you're interested in any of those, and please take a look at that. We have a lot of resources in there. But this being said, today we're kind of going to dive into the tools themselves and actually do like a show and tell, because earlier in June and July we had so much to cover that it would have taken so much time to actually go and do the step-by-step. In addition, we also will provide some resources in the PowerPoint slides that we have here. So we'll probably definitely share the slides so you can click on the links. So when you're going to see a slide that has a URL, don't try to frantically copy it down. We'll just share it. It's just to show that it's there and you can click on it afterwards. So here we go. So let's get started. So for today, I think for next week, just to add on to Kate, we do have a list of topics for next week. I don't know it off the top of my head right at the moment, but today what we're going to cover is groups, discussion boards, and automation tools. It's a bit mystical, but you'll get to see afterwards when you get to myCourses. There's particular tools that allow things to be automated. So let's get started right now with groups. So I'm going to go with the different types of groups that you can use in myCourses. So the first one, which is student group projects, is probably the one that you're most often used to seeing in myCourses, where you have a group of students that are getting together and they need to produce a common set of deliverables as one unit. So generally what we would create is a student, it would allow a student to submit an assignment on behalf of the group, and the instructor can grade and give feedback to all of the group in one go, rather than each individual student. The other thing that you can do with the student group projects is you can create workspaces for them to work with, like discussion topics. You can also have a locker, but the locker, I would go and say to be cautious about that, because the space is very, very limited. But discussion topics is something that you may consider, where it allows you to keep track of the student activity, if you want to do that, and if they want to show that to the instructor, because of course they have plenty of tools that they have available, like email and Teams, and they may use it outside of myCourses. But if you want to keep track of it, you can give that space to them. So that's the student group projects. Another scenario that you can use groups for is if you have a big class and you have an instructional team or many TAs and graders, you can actually set groups that are set for that, where let's say several teaching assistants are assigned to particular students, and then you can create that, and that TAs can see the students that they're responsible for, and they don't see the other students when they filter it out, so they don't accidentally give a grade to a student they're not responsible for. Of course, they can still see the other students in the course, but it just allows to filter. So they can filter in the gradebook, they can filter in the assignments and quizzes, all these places that they can filter for. So it's more for, I guess, admin use, not really for students per se when they have that. Another one that we're going to cover, because we're going to talk about discussions as well, is the weekly discussion cohorts. So you can restrict or maybe have smaller group discussions. In this case, it would be asynchronously, where it's going to happen in myCourses and not in Zoom, where you can create smaller group discussions, and you can have each students give each other comments or feedback to each other, rather than having a large class and maybe it being overwhelming to give a comment to 200 students, let's say. So that's something else. And you can restrict it based on a topic as well as you go through. And lastly, I know it doesn't really make sense to call it groups when it's individual journals, but this is myCourses' way, or the vendor's way of creating a space for students to write in a discussion topic, and that's restricted to themselves. So it basically creates a group or individual that's restricted to one person, and the only people that can see it is themselves and the instructor. So those are common scenarios that you can think of when you're creating a group. Oh, there's another thing that I want to add in terms of questions. Feel free to type in your questions here, but in general, what I will in the chat, what I'll do is we'll reserve a bit of space as well between the topics as we switch over, so that we can handle some of the questions before we move on to something that a different topic altogether. So let's go on to the next one. So when you're going to create groups, something to think about, and the part that's kind of confusing, I think, with Brightspace is they give a lot of options of creating groups. And so I've kind of narrowed it down to a couple names, which is think about manual enrollment. And manual enrollment means the instructor enrolls the student. Auto enrollment is the system will enroll for everybody, and it could be done alphabetically or randomized if you check off that box. And then self-enrollment is basically the student sees the group names, and then they can self-organize and say, oh, I want to enroll in this particular topic, or I want to be with these students, so I'm going to go and enroll and select that group and be together with my friends. The other option as well that you have to think about is when you create groups is how many groups in total are you going to have in the course? So you can think about that either by doing the number of total groups or the maximum number of students within a group. So with the combination of those two, you'll see that that's what it's going to show later on when we create the groups. I think the next part is my tips, but we'll get to this afterwards. So this is the part where I'm going to go to the browser, and I'm going to start from here. So a little warning: I tend to go fairly quickly when I browse to the browser. So if there's any time, you need to tell me to slow down. I'm going to try to see in the participants list here. I think you can use the reactions tool under more, and I'll try to keep an eye on it. Was it participants? Let me just double check. Oh yes, yeah. So when you go to the participants tool, you have a go slower or go faster. In likelihood, I probably wouldn't be going that much slower, but you can go ahead and click on that if you want to. And just to check if you know what I'm talking about here is just click yes to show, to make sure that you're still there. Yep. Okay. I see a couple of you guys are doing it. And I know some of you guys are eating, so you may have your hands full, so it's okay. But at any point in time, if you feel that I'm going a little too fast, and of course you can chime in if some of you have the audio enabled while I'm presenting on the screen. Okay, so something to start off on the browser is by default the groups here on the navbar is not there. It's kind of hidden in under course admin. So something to think about if you want students, if they're going to be self-enrolling, or if you want students to see which groups they belong in, you can add that to the navbar. And I'm not going to show that part, but I'll give a link afterwards to show you how to add to navbar. But if you want to go, for example, on course admin is what you normally would go through, you would find it under groups, under learner management, over here under groups. And so I'm going to show a really simple way of creating a group so that it's going to be fairly quick, but we can talk about it later on. If you have any questions on different setups of groups, we can go through that. So the category that we're going to go through is the way I will explain this is a category is it's the type of activity that the students will do within the group. So for example, when I talked about earlier, if I wanted to talk about like a group presentation or the student group project, you would call that the final group presentation, which is the category. And then within that is the groups that they are going to be enrolled in. So these are, the categories are the main concept ideas. So we talked about the group projects or also the one that I talked about, which is the grading teams, if you want. So you can have multiple categories, but the students are going to be enrolled inside of the groups within the category. So let me actually go create one, and maybe that'll make it clear as we go through. So here's a new category, and I'm going to call this. Actually, we already have a weekly discussion, but it'll be the final group presentation. We have this there, and I'm going to choose. So this is the what I talked about earlier about giving multiple options. So this is the single user, member specific, auto enrollment, self enrollment is there. But I'm going to keep it really simple just now to manual enrollment. So that's the instructor enrolling and the number of groups. I'm going to say 10 for now. And you don't have to worry too much about if you have the exact number, because you can add them afterwards when you go back and edit it. So let's say after add drop, you have a lot less groups or a lot more students, you can still tweak that. The restrict enrollments too, you don't have to worry too much about this, but this is basically if you want to create subgroups. So this gets a little bit fancy if you want to go create subgroups in there. And the group prefix is if you want to have a name that shows up before the group name. To keep it simple, I'm just going to leave it blank, and it's just going to add 1, 2, 3, and 4 as a group name if you want. So for example, here, we could make it visible for students if you want. And this is what I talked about earlier is setting up discussions and assignments. So something to think about if you're planning group work or for example, in my case, I'm planning the final group presentation, and I will want them to submit the slides. So I will want to have that set up. And of course, you can't necessarily plan for everything in advance, but when you're creating the group, if you have the possibility to do that in advance, I would recommend it, because once you do this, it all sets the restrictions to the groups, and it sets the restrictions to discussions right away. So you don't have to think about it afterwards. But Claire will also show you afterwards that you can set it individually, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you can plan ahead, it's a good thing to have. So I'm going to plan on creating the assignment where this one student will submit for all their their peers in the group. So I'm going to click save. Okay, I'm just quickly checking the participants to see does it go slower or faster. Okay, so this is, I'm creating the assignment is here's the submit your presentation. Oops. I'm not gonna add instructions today, but I'm sure you guys know. So as you can tell, it's already set to a group assignment, and this is the category that's gonna be set for the submission. Unlimited files, that's fine if they have multiple files that they want to submit, and all submissions are kept. This is really creating the assignment tool, so I'm not going to linger too much on this, and then I'm going to create. Okay, so click done. So I've created with the groups an assignment as well that's there. So this is it brings me back to the group, and then I'm going to click on save. So I've created the groups. You'll see now that under final group presentation category, I have 10 groups here. That's listed. And so because it's set to manual enrollment, what you can do now is you can go to the group and enroll users. So you can do two things actually. You can also change the name, but you can enroll users. And there's only one student here because this is a course that's available for you. I think you can access it in myCourses, but everybody's enrolled as a course designer. So only students will show up in the options to add as a group, because by default, instructors, TAs, and course designers all have access to all the groups, so you don't have to be enrolled in it. But in my case, I added myself as a demo student, and I will talk to you as well afterwards how you can get access to that if you don't already. So you can try it out. So I'm going to enroll myself to group 1, and I have that there. And you can see that there's one member here in the group, and it shows up there. So here you can, as I was saying, you can also tweak the group name. So something to think about is if you're doing, what do you call this? If you want to do groups where students choose their own names, you can pre-create these, and then students would email you or tell you the names of the groups afterwards, and then you can add it here. So this would be, I don't know, maybe they chose to talk about this topic. I don't know. And then afterwards you can, you just tweak the topics afterwards to names so that they make sense for you and them afterwards. So we have that there. And then, so if I'm going to show you what it looks like from a student's perspective. So I'm going to go now. So I have a different browser with my demo student that I'm going to log into. So this is how a demo student would log in. They would click on guest, and then they would you would have an account called demo.yourfirstname.last. So basically, you would have to request this account if you haven't already to IT support, and it's itsupport@mcgill.ca. And there's a slide at the end that I'll show you how to submit that request. But I've added myself to the course, so I don't have to do that. And so this is from a student's perspective. Keep in mind that, this is the getting started widget. Keep in mind that you can always, go as an instructor. I'm just gonna go back just to show you. You can do this view a student, but the view a student only goes so far, in particular if it's enrollment to groups, right? So in this case, because I really wanna see what the student sees, this is what I would see. So now I'm enrolled as a student, and I can see under groups, this is the group I'm enrolled in, and I can see who's part of my group. And I also have access to potentially other discussions or sending an email to my group members. But of course, they are not there. It's only me, so it's there. So that's what the students would see from that perspective. Okay, so let me just double check. I think that's. Let's go through. We talked about the groups. Okay, let's quickly talk about some tips.
There are a couple of questions in the chat. I don't know if we want to address them as we.
Yeah, sure. Like this would be a good time. Let's take a look at it.
So it's there's one from Francoise about using groups versus assignment to provide the slides for the assignment. my understanding of that is that you didn't, it's not that you're using groups for the assignment, is that you use the group making tool to create an assignment at the same time.
That's exactly it. So that's exactly it. So like in terms of, it's basically to provide where are the students gonna give the deliverable to the instructor. That's what I did. It's not sharing it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay.
And you can do it after the fact also. You
exactly.
can also just go to the assignment tool after you've made your groups and make group assignments there as well.
That's exactly it. I guess it depends on how that presentation is to be shown, right? Like if this presentation is done via Zoom, that's maybe where they're going to be evaluated too, right? They're going to be doing it in Zoom, but then they're gonna submit to the instructor their slides. It's not sharing it to all the students. In this case, it's sharing it to just the instructor to be graded. If you want, you can have a discussion topic where it's shared to all the students afterwards. Yeah, no, it's not one or the other. It's like it's using in combination. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And the locker function is here. It's an archaic, and I will say archaic because it's been around since D2L has had it many years ago, before Dropbox, before OneDrive, and it's a space basically that you can upload files. There's no versioning. It's kind of, I would say, an upgrade to email attachments, but not really, and it's limited to 5 megabytes. So I think it's not really that great. So I would say maybe not create one, but direct students to other things that they have access to, like OneDrive, like Teams. So now they can create teams as well, and that's something that it's leaps beyond better functionality than this part. But in terms of the discussions, it's still nice, I think, to keep that there, and they can still attach files in the discussion. So if they're like, here's my part, and they post it there, and they add an attachment, it kind of serves as a locker as well, and as a timestamp to say, okay, this is my part that I've completed there. Okay, I hope that answers the question. So just to go back to the tips, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. Let's here. Okay, so that's it. What I talked about is definitely, I think, if this is the first time you're doing groups, practice with a demo account, so that you can see what it looks like, especially when you're going to start restricting things, the discussion topics or other things. It's nice to see that what it looks like from a student's perspective, or if you want to even give a grade, that can be done too. Another tip is, if you're doing the enrollment manually, or even if you're letting the system auto enroll, is do it after the add drop period, because there may be shifting around, right? So it's gonna save you some time later on to not have to unenroll somebody or enroll and manually change things. So something to think about when you're doing the enrolling in groups. And lastly, as well as so the workspaces that I talked about, the locker discussions, is so when you create the groups, name them before you create the discussions afterwards. So you remember how I called it COVID-19? So I took, like, I would take the names from the students, enter it in the groups, and then after that, you can do create the discussions. That way the names come with the discussion topics. Yeah, I don't know if it's different from nursing, but there is a website. Let me just that Miguel has, which is,
I think it's September 15th, but I'm not positive. I'm looking it up right now.
Okay, let me just I'm popping it up. I don't know if you follow the same. Let's see.
Yeah, so it's
it's September 15th.
September 15th.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so that's the tips. Okay, so in terms of the resources, this is where you can request the demo account. So email to itsupport@miguel.ca. The standard is it'll be called demo.yourfirstname.yourlastname, and then you will enroll yourself into into the course. So if you're not familiar with this, there's a step. Actually, I can quickly show you this. This should be pretty quick. So if you go to the class list, oh, this is my student account. This would be it. So if you go to the class list and you want to enroll yourself, you do add participants, add existing users, and then you would just search demo dot your first name dot last. You can probably tell that there's, like, let's say if I search for all demos, there's going to be a lot of accounts that's going to show up there that are different demo accounts for different folks. So that's it. And then you would add yourself as, you probably won't have as many roles, but I would select demo student as your role as well, because that will be able to distinguish. Later on, we're going to talk about intelligent agents, and you can do things, so you can send particularly to demo students and not your students. So you can test that out. So that's how you can enroll them. So by that part, I think I'm done talking about, oh, and then there's the links for creating groups. There's a lot of detailed information about the different types of groups, and as well as like, that's it, the nitty gritty on each options. And this is how you would add the link to the navbar. So we'll go on to the next part. Let me stop sharing. And then maybe we can take in any other questions on groups before we move on to discussions. If there isn't any, we can, you know, if you guys want to actually also chat about what you're thinking about doing, that can also do that.
One thing that I would like to just remind people is that a student can be in more than one kind of group and more than one group. It's not, they're not limited to one group. This is a question that's come up a couple of times in the IBL world about setting that up. So you can have the IBL group, you can have discussion groups, you can have a clinical group, like you can have several things happening all within the myCourses platform.
Great. So I guess if there's no questions, I'll move on to our next topic. I'm just going to share my screen. Great. So you guys can see my slide okay? Great. So this is our next topic, to just go over some of the functionality of discussions in myCourses. But I wanted to start a little bit with some considerations around planning and managing discussions. Teddy kind of alluded to this, and you saw, like, you know, sometimes there's different avenues, two different ways that you can accomplish the same thing in myCourses. So particularly with discussions, if you have sort of your bigger plan for your course as a whole, it will help you when you're implementing it in myCourses. So the first question was, how do you want your students to interact with each other? And this kind of gets to what Amanda was saying, in terms of thinking about if there's different groups that you want to create that students will belong to. So you could have the large group discussion, like a general comments and questions space where everybody has access. It can save some emails if people post there and answer each other, or you post one response for everybody to see. You can also, you know, if you, when you know, like, your clinical blocks will be completing maybe a discussion on a different timeline because they're doing their placement, you may want to have groups around the clinical blocks so that you can release the discussion activities at slightly different dates if needed. If you have a large class, you may want to create smaller discussion groups just to make it manageable for everybody. So there's a lot of variety in terms of the type of interactions you might want your students to have. And if you think about it in advance, it's going to help you with coming up with the structure for your discussion board. The second question to consider is, what are your expectations? So this is in terms of what you expect, setting up some simple, consistent expectations for your students. So For each discussion, do they need to post one original thread and 2 replies? Or having a reoccurring submission day. So every Sunday, they get in the habit that they have to do their discussion posts for a particular course. So just some of these strategies for around expectations to keep it consistent and simple for your students. And when you map these expectations to all the different interactions in your planning, you might discover, oh, there's a bit of a workload issue here. And so you might reconsider your plan. So it might be helpful to sort of have your discussion activities mapped out, then what you're expecting, and then kind of seeing of how they overlap. The next is who will moderate the discussion. So, discussion boards can become really intensive, especially as a course instructor, and if you're trying to read everything. So you can consider different models. You could look at having a student moderated discussion. So this, as an example, would be having a student take the lead for a week on the discussion board. And during that week, they wouldn't be expected to post an original post, but they would be expected to be replying and connecting dots between their peers, what their peers had posted. And I've included in the resources at the end an example of instructions implementing this type of an activity from the University of Waterloo that quite clearly explains all the requirements in a good amount of detail. So you might find that helpful as a resource. And finally, will the discussion posts be graded? So, this is a place where there's a lot of options depending on your context for your course. You can decide if you want to assess like the quality of what is being written in the post versus participation in terms of actively engaging on the discussion board, with less focus on the specifics of what was written, but the fact that they were present on the board. And so in myCourses, there are you can make a gradable discussion post or discussion topic, and that's more at the participation level, like they did an original post, they did a reply, that kind of counting kind of mechanism. But if you're looking at the quality of what is written in these posts, then you could consider having like a participation portfolio created by students where they, at a midterm or end of term, they select and submit what they consider to be their, most meaningful contribution to the discussion board, and then you grade that as an assignment. So that's a way to kind of, frame it into a more manageable grading scenario for yourself. And alternatively, you could also consider using some of the peer rating tools that are available in myCourses as another means of giving students feedback. So there's like the 5-star kind of scale, and there's like the thumbs up kind of rating that you can turn on in the settings to allow students to interact that way. So before I go into a small demo, I did want to go over the myCourses terminology, just because if you use different discussion boards, they often have little different terms. So at the top level, you have a forum. And this is essentially categories for organizing your discussion topics. And then next down would be topics. And this is creating the space where discussion threads are created. So it could be the, if they're discussing an article, that could be the topic. And then next up are threads. This is where the student is creating an original post. And finally, we have replies, and that's, as it sounds, a student is replying to another student thread. And so just to note here that instructors can create new forums and new topics, but students are not able to perform that task in myCourses. So you have to kind of create the structure for the discussion board in which students will be adding their threads and replies. So it is a little bit of a limitation of myCourses in some ways, that they're not able to create a new topic to discuss. So from here, I'm going to share my screen or go into my browser to do a little demo. So here we go. You guys can see my myCourses okay? Great. All right. So here we have our discussion board in the Learning 101 course, Online Learning 101 course. And we already have a discussion forum created called Community Discussions. And here we have two topics, questions and comments and introduce yourself activity. So this is, these are available to all students. Everybody can view them. Everyone can post in them. So it's really just sort of a central hub for communicating with all students via the discussion board. But let's say you wanted to have case studies, and because of the clinical blocks, you are going to organize it so that each the students within a clinical block will discuss the case together. So for this scenario, I'm going to show you a couple ways that it could be set up. So the first would be creating a new forum. And I'm going to call it Case Study Discussions. And you can add a description. I'm going to leave that blank for right now. You have a number of options. And I'm going to select users must start a thread before they can read and reply to other threads. So they need to post their ideas before they can read other people's ideas. And there is also the option if you want posts to be approved by a moderator before they are displayed. So depending on the context of your activity, you might want to have different options selected. And what am I doing for this one? I'm just going to save it here. I'm not going to set any restrictions, but within restrictions is where you would set any sort of dates, like the availability for it to be visible to the students. You know, if you want to lock it at a certain point, if they have 1 week to complete their discussion, then you can lock it so that it ends the discussion. But I'm just going to save it as is. And so now we see that as a category, as a forum here, and I'm going to add a topic. And I'm going to call this topic, I'm gonna do the topics based on like case study number 3. And I'm also going to add block 1 into the title, because as an instructor, I'm going to see all of the groups listed, all the discussions listed, and so it'll make it so that I can easily see, you know, this is block 1 discussion. And then I'm going to leave this description blank and save and close. Oops, actually, I forgot to do something. So I'm going to edit it. And I'm going to go into the restrictions. And this is where I would restrict it to my group. So group and section restrictions. And I'm going to add the group from my case study discussion groups, clinical block 1, add it. And so this means that students who are registered in that group or part of that group will see this discussion topic. And so I would create 2 more groups for block 2 and block 3 as one way of organizing this type of an activity. But you know, as Teddy mentioned, there are kind of a number of ways that you can organize your discussion board. So Alternatively, you could organize it as a new forum. So this is for the same scenario of case studies. And so I'm going to do a topic case study number 3, a forum. And again, I'm going to make it so that they have to post. Or actually, I'm not going to set it here. I'm going to, in restrictions, at this level, at the forum level, is where I'm going to restrict it to the group. So in my first example, I did the restriction at the topic level. And here I'm restricting it at the forum level to that clinical block 1 group. I'm going to add it and save it. So, and then I'll add a topic. Oh, so, and this is going to be case study number 3. And I'm going to make, and then at the topic level, I'll make it so that they have to post. So in the first example, I set it at the forum level. You can also set it at the topic level. Or if you decided, if you had created all your topics and then decided you wanted to add that restriction, you could go back and put it on at the forum level and it would apply to all the topics. And here, if we wanted to, this is where you would turn on the rating, so that 5-star rating or upvote only, or upvote, downvote, you can add that rating here and save and close. And so I realized that I misnamed my forum here. I actually wanted to call it case study discussions. Clinical block 1. And so save. So case study discussions, clinical block 1. And then here I could have like all the case studies for that particular group of students saved under that forum. So yeah, there's, you know, there's a lot of different options on how you structure your discussion forum. I would say you need to think about the titles that you're giving to the forums and the topics, so that they're meaningful to you and your students, and organizing them in a way that makes sense to you, because you're going to see all of the discussion forums. Your students will, if it's group-based, they'll only see the forum that they're part of a group for. So they're not going to see necessarily everything that you're seeing, but you know, taking the time to plan it and sort of think about what makes sense to you and for your students to navigate through is an important step with your discussions.
So there were a couple of questions, and I'm just not sure. I see a question from Christine, and I don't know if we want to. I think we're having a back and forth a little bit in the chat. I don't know if we want to address it as the main topic. So I don't know, Christine, if you want to ask your question to the group, or we can pick it up from where it is in the chat. So what I was understanding from the question is the idea of creating groups when you're in the discussion, which I think is not exactly what was going on, is that you had your groups already created. Yes, and then you use those groups to then create your discussion groups in the discussion tab. If that's what I'm understanding in the question and between that and the conversation that Teddy and Christine were having.
Yeah,
exactly. Am I correct in understanding the question?
I had my groups created, but as Teddy was showing, but he didn't walk you through, you can do it the opposite way, where when you create your groups, you enable the discussion forum group space, and then that will populate your discussion page with spaces for all the groups that are created. So it's again that sort of getting to the same result from different pathways that myCourses has built into it. So really it's sort of going in and playing around and not being scared, because you can delete things. So in this time as you're setting up the course, you can try out a few things and say, nope, that doesn't make sense, delete and start over. Or as I showed you, it's very easy to go in and edit the name, you know, or some of the settings if you decide to apply a different setting to a discussion. But as Teddy mentioned, sometimes the sequence in which you do things can have an impact. So just being aware of that. The example for him was changing the name before you create the discussion link from the groups, as an example. And so I'll just quickly, like, to wrap up, and we can keep discussing discussions. I added some resources. The first two are for myCourses, creating discussions and creating gradable discussions. And then I've also added some references and, like, quick reads and example instructions for discussion-based activities that just might help inspire your planning. And they're just resources that we've discussed in other webinars and such. But as I was gathering things, I thought they might be particularly helpful for you guys.
Claire, if we can interrupt you.
Sorry. Now, okay, thank you.
Christine.
I am unmuted now. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. You
so
can go
my
ahead.
follow-up question thank you. My follow-up question then, as I can understand the difference, I think, because we can do both, is that if you go in this discussion first and you put your topic and then you create your subgroup, is that everybody can see everybody's responses that can only respond within their groups. Would that be the difference? Whereas if you create the groups first and then you have their topics, people cannot go into the other groups to see what they posted. But then if you create discussion first, topics, and then put them into the subgroups, then everybody can see everybody's posting, that it can only post within their group. Is that the difference?
I can maybe answer that one, Claire.
Yep.
So the restriction, even if you do it before or after within the topics, like the release condition, I guess, if you want, is basically once you add it to either the forum or the topic, it then prevents other people that aren't in the group or the category in the group to see it. So they can't. It's not like a locking it to only the people that are in the group to post, but it's visible to everybody. It's a pretty much it's restricted both ways. It's restricted to the group. The topic is restricted to the group, or the forum is restricted to the group. So it's not they can post and everybody can see. It's still restricted to each. The topic is restricted to each group, if you want. Does that answer it, I guess? But it's an interesting case if you want to have students still post within like their groups, but have it visible to everybody. It could be something that maybe you want to remove this restriction afterwards, but lock the discussion topic. So it's kind of a little bit of playing with the features where you're like, okay, you have this set of time to respond within the group. And then afterwards, we're gonna just remove the restriction of the groups and make it visible. But it's probably something you wanna tell students ahead of time that's what you're gonna do, so that they don't get a false sense of, oh, I'm chatting within the group, and then afterwards it's releasing it. So, but it is actually feasible if you wanted to do that way.
Teddy, there's another question here. that maybe you can answer in more detail. Does myCourses software create a have a description of all the features it has and how to implement them? So I'm thinking it's all the little check boxes, for example, associated with creating a discussion. Francois, is that what you were?
Is that like a help?
Yeah, sorry. What I'm wondering is because see, I'm looking at all of this information and found it's really interesting, and I'm taking notes and stuff. But I'm wondering if myCourse doesn't have a place where you could search for something and then you'll get the answer. You'll have some kind of it's not like a book, but it's going to be like a place where, let's say, if you search for discussion board, how to make your groups, how to do this, how to do that. So then you click on this, and then whoops, you've got, okay, first of all, you go into forum, you do this, you do that, and because see, I'm taking notes and stuff, but of course I'll probably forget, and then when I have to do it, it's like, where do I ask? Do I ask TLS, but then they are busy, and then do I go into IT? And so if we had a place where you're stuck, because I was stuck several times this summer, and then I had to, search how am I going to manage this. If there was some kind of a place where you can just go and then search, and then you'll have the answer, and then you try it and stuff. And I don't know if this is something that myCourses has.
I can take that, I guess, Claire. So I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna share my screen again, and then I'm gonna show. So the website that is currently available now, so it has a different URL, but I think it's a very good point. I think we're gonna have to add it to their PowerPoint slides. But if you type in miguel.ca/IT support, so the IT has a new KB, and TLS is also working on its own KB. So eventually there's going to be some resources there. But for now, where you want to go is miguel.ca/IT support. And when you get to that page, it's gonna look like this. So when you want to search for the knowledge base, you can either browse knowledge or you can type in the question here. So what I generally do. And you can see that it's all connected. If you submit tickets as well, or if you've called IT support, you'll notice that soon you can actually see all your requests that are going in. Claire, you had something?
I was just going to make a note that to access the knowledge base with the new system, you need to be logged in. So sometimes you might click on the link that we provided in the PowerPoint slide, and it'll have an error message. But once you log in to the IT support portal here, the knowledge base will be visible. So it's something that actually is new that I've encountered in the last few weeks as well when I've been clicking on links.
Great point. So you can tell that I'm already signed in, so it's skipping that step. But once you are signed in, when you do the search box here, you'll see that there's tons of articles on myCourses. So this includes so many things, including how to connect to VPN and everything else. But you'll see that if you're looking for discussions, you can see creating discussions, managing discussions, and it's mostly all for myCourses. The main thread of it, you can probably look at it under instructor myCourses. And here you have, oops, I had it 2 seconds ago. It was the index of documentation for instructors using myCourses. So that gives you all the links to pretty much all the documentation that we have for myCourses, including groups. So if you go there and then you search for groups, you can have the creating that's course layout. No, there you go, class management groups, and then you can go to the topic. But you can also still search for it over here, and it'll provide the different articles that's available there. But just keep in mind there's everything in there. So everything IT, so you can go to like blog. So the key idea is make sure you see myCourses, I think, at the end of it, so that you're not requesting a room booking account or something like that. Yeah. So that's pretty much it.
I would also say sometimes just Googling the question with not myCourses, but Brightspace or D2L in the name can bring up other resources, sometimes videos that will walk you through, or or maybe another university has you know, set something up with a very particular context and walks you through the steps. And so there's a lot of great resources that you can find, you know, even through Google.
Thank you.
That's a good point, that there is also help directly within myCourses that you can get access to, and I think it connects directly to the documents. Thanks for adding that, Kimani. Okay, so I think I mean, unless there's any questions for discussions, we can go to the next part. Can go back to the PowerPoint, which is automation tools. It's a pretty ominous word, automation, but it's just to show that there's some things that myCourses can do for you, so that it makes your life a bit simpler. Sometimes a bit more complicated because it takes tweaking and you have to play around with your demo account to make sure it works. But the intent is to make your life simpler. So what we're talking about here is one of them is called the intelligent agents. And so I've talked about this in a previous webinar under managing course. But basically, so you can see other examples that I talk about there. But the gist of it, it's sending an automated email based on a condition that happens. And so we talked earlier about some release conditions, and we talked about the groups as a release condition, but there can be many other conditions that we can set in myCourses. So this automated email can go to the student, but it can also go to you. So in this particular example that we have on the right is it's actually telling the student, hey, we've noticed that you haven't clicked on quiz 1 or 2 or 3. Maybe you want to go and take a look at it and do it before the due date, which is going to close in a couple of days. And some things that you can do too with the intelligent agent is in a combination of some more automation is you can have replace strings. So that allows you to customize it and make it more personable. So you can see that it says hello Teddy, but it's actually the code that you put in when you create the intelligent agent is actually initiating user first name. So when the condition is met, it knows, oh, Teddy hasn't logged in to and accessed the quiz 1 and 2. It will send that email. With also, you'll see the org unit name is the name of the course, which is at the top there. So it kind of cues in for the students where they have to pay attention to. Something to keep in mind when I talk about intelligent agents is that think about it as a tool that you want to make sure that you send an email based on something that there's a condition. So there's sometimes, something that's much easier is you post an announcement or you email. So that there's something about like a balancing act about how many intelligent, like for me, when I saw it, I was like, oh, how many times can I create many intelligent agents for this? But at the end of the day, if you want to keep it simple, sometimes just an announcement saying, hey guys, just remember that you have to complete the quiz. But this is a great way to actually add some personal touch so that it shows for students, hey, I noticed that you haven't done it. So it's just something to keep in mind, to not go overboard as well with intelligent agents. And so that's that. And when we talked about release conditions, I just saw your hand raised, Claire. Yeah.
I just saw a question. Kate asked if students can unsubscribe from these emails.
in your image, it said too many emails, unsubscribe. I'm like, they can unsubscribe from my.
Let me just see that. That's a good question. Oh, I didn't even notice that. Yeah, it does say that. Okay, so that's an Outlook feature. I don't think you can unsubscribe from that aspect. It's not. It's going to annoy the student. I guess they can probably filter it out. Do the junk mail and say, you know what, I'm getting too many of these emails. I'm not. So another example is like you haven't logged in for 6 days. So if they keep on not logging in for 6 days, then I think it's good for them to get the reminders. But the way they manage their email, it's really up to them. This is Outlook feature.
Yeah, you can also send them emails of them catching them doing good stuff too. You've signed in 5 times this week. I don't know, but
yeah, no, absolutely. Like you've completed your quiz, and congratulations, you've done you're past halfway of the course. Absolutely, those are great examples of using the intelligent agents as a kind of a reward if you want. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I just saw the comment. You definitely spreading the different ways of announcing is also a good thing, especially when there's less contact with students these days. So definitely doing both could also be something to think about.
I think also overall it's important in kind of your contract with students, your expectations that you do at the beginning of your course, that you tell them that you will be like the email versus announcements versus things, because students will, oh, I didn't see it, or they didn't log into myCourses to see the announcements. And one thing that I also have talked to them about doing is making sure that their alerts are set in a way that they will get important information from me. So sometimes students will unsubscribe from all of the myCourses email alerts. And so we talk about that as a group of like, this is where I will be announcing if your clinical is canceled at 6:30 in the morning. So maybe you should make sure you log into myCourses before you leave your house. Those kind of moments, just to really be clear with the students how you're going to be communicating last minute information as well as some of the other information they might need.
So there's a couple of questions that came in. Thank you, Amanda. So Catherine, we're going to get to where we get set up. So I'm going to get there in the next step. But Annie, it's announcements. So it is a little bit extra is you can pre-create announcements and set a date release afterwards. So if you want to automate that and you know ahead of time, I want to release this announcement at a specific time, you can pre-create it and just not have it sent to students. So that's the announcement part, but it's a different tool. So you can do it there. Now, in terms of setting up for intelligent agents, I'm going to cover the release conditions first, and then I'll get to the quick demo. So the release condition, as we've seen really briefly with the discussions and the groups, you can release it by group enrollment, right? But there are many other criteria that you can add. And including the one we just saw earlier with the email is the completion of an activity. So have they completed the assignment? Have they completed the discussion? Have they completed or posted a discussion topic, posted a thread or replied, those kind of things, or completed a quiz. So you can really get into many little things there with release conditions when you're using it in combination, either with intelligent agents or you're releasing content as well. So release conditions can be tied to many things. And when you create them in your course, they actually stay, so you can actually reuse them if you want to. But without further ado, let's go take a look at what it looks like. And I'm going to move, that's not the one that I want to see. This is the actual email that you get from the students, but I'm going to go first in the, so this is where we get to it. You would go under course admin, and then you would scroll under, sometimes I'm lazy and I just do a find, but I see it's under under communication. So, but sometimes, if you know where you're trying to find the tool, it's like, oh, there it is. I just do a find and click on it. So it's there. And thank you, Kate, for bringing these intelligent agents over from a previous course. So I've actually played around with this. So you can see that right now they are disabled because they were copied from a previous course, so they don't automatically turn on right away. You may want to tweak it a little bit, and that's what I did. So if you go to one of them, this was the quiz 1 and 2 and 3 deadline, and you scroll down, you can see this is, okay, so the agent name, it doesn't really show for the students, it's just what you want to call it. So like when you go from one semester to another, you'll remember, oh, that's what it was for. So you can go there. And then here, the criteria is based on who are we evaluating the criteria on. In most cases, it's going to be the student, right? So you don't have to worry too much about all the other roles here. In my case, I checked off demo student because I actually want to try it out with my demo student that I've enrolled there. And maybe you want to create the intelligent agent specifically for the demo student so you can try it out and get the email and not worry that students are getting emailed. Another thing to keep in mind as you go down, you'll see here is, so that's the release condition. I'm gonna skip quickly over to the actions here. So there's something to think about is when will the criteria, when it's fulfilled, when will, like, what will happen? Will it, if it's the first time, for example, where the quiz 1 and 2 and 3, it's satisfied the condition and they haven't completed within the 2 days, it's gonna email them once. But the take action every time means that it will always, every time that this condition is this intelligent agent is run, then it will send an email. So in this case, the reason why we would choose first time is because, hey, we only want to send their email once and not keep on sending them the reminder. So this is one where you would choose only the first time, and we'll show afterwards where you want to use it multiple times afterwards. So if I go back to the release condition, so here you have based on login activity, course activity, we can look at another one that it'll be more useful to see that. But here, the conditions are here. So here's where you would create and attach a condition, and you would choose, you remember I talked about like assignment completion or quiz completion. Let's stick to the quiz just so that you can see. So you can see, so something that D2L added was they also added not completed and completed. So you can now choose the two. So they haven't completed an attempt, but before it was only stuck to whether they completed. So you can do the not completed, and then let's add quiz week 4, for example. So it adds this. Something to keep in mind, as you can see here, any condition must be met is basically any of these. If quiz 1 wasn't completed, then they get the message. If quiz 2 and 3 isn't completed, but if you want to have all of them, so it means that they must have not completed quiz 1, 2, and 3, and 4, then that's where you do all conditions must be met. So they have to be all together in order to send that email. But in this case, it'd be, if they haven't completed any of these, then they will get that email. So afterwards, I think that's the key. Okay, and then we're going to talk about the email. So the key other item here that we want to cover is initiating user. So this is pretty much the person that the criteria is flagged, or okay, like Teddy didn't submit the quiz. Instead of actually typing in Teddy, this is the automation. It will actually choose the user that satisfied that criteria, will be sent that email to. So you can if ever you forget this kind of code, you can always click on these. Oh, sorry, is it this one? Or is it, oh, this one. What special email addresses can I use? So you can go back and oh, this is the one, and copy and paste it. Earlier I talked about replace strings as well, right? It's like, oh, I don't remember org unit name. You can click on this little link here, and then it'll just pop up. And so you can take the, there's a lot of replace strings, but the most useful ones that I find that are useful is the org unit name and the first name. The others, I mean, you can also use the login path for them to go directly to the site that the course. But I think those are the two ones that you can have. So that you can customize basically the subject line and as well as the email body. This is the replace string, and put in there. So I mean, something to keep in mind as well, if you use intelligent agents over the several courses, is maybe you want to think about how you tweak these dates, because it's good to have the dates as a reminder, but it's something to keep in mind. If you copy these over to next term, don't forget to tweak those dates afterwards, so that because well, one, you won't have to worry too much about it because they come in disabled when you copy. So you have to enable it anyways, but before you enable them, make sure you tweak the dates. So that's why I also like to have things like org unit name, because the course will be a different name, potentially a different name next semester. So that way you don't have to change that course name again. So that's the automation there. And then you can have a schedule. Okay, so schedule, basically something to keep in mind is intelligent agents doesn't work every second. So the criteria is evaluated at a specific point, and this is where when you would put the schedule. So it's generally once a day, I believe. Is there a particular time? Let me just see here. I think it is some, and I have to double check that one. I think it's somewhere in the middle of the night, and then that it gets evaluated. And once it's evaluated, that that email gets sent. So even though you're creating this agent, the automation part only happens that once a day. Let me just double check if we can see that answer here. No, it's not there directly. But the other thing you can do if you're testing it, so let me just save that as we go through. If you're testing it, and that's something you definitely want to practice, is there's a couple of options here. You can have a practice run, and then you can have a run now. And run now does that manual. I want to make sure that the email gets sent to students now. Or you can do the practice run, which is basically running the criteria, but not emailing them. So if I do that, I'm gonna click on that. Let me just go through here. Was this the one that I just didn't know? That was this morning. So let me just go back to, okay. Sorry, I'm clicking to too many places at once. Here, let me just go back to here and go back to the results of the last run. Okay, so this was done at 1:46. So it found nobody that satisfied that criteria. So remember how I told before that this was, if it's the first time that happened, then the next time they won't get the email. So in my case, like my demo Teddy didn't complete any of those quizzes. So you can see here all the history that when I did a manual run, it identified me as a user, but later on, it won't send me the email again because it already sent that email once. So that's how you can tell that it was already satisfied. So something to keep in mind is what I'll give you as an advice is, if it's the first time that you're creating intelligent agents, like you can create it there, make a copy, like I just did there. So if you just create a copy, and then what you could do is, so I have multiple copies here, is tweak it so that it's not sent to the students, but sent to only your demo account student. And that way you can keep on playing around with it and see if it works. You do the practice run or the manual run. And then once you're done with it, you're just delete it. So you're like, okay, this one I'm done with. It's my practice run if you want, but this one is my original one that I'll have for the students. So something to play around with. Okay, so one more thing. The other intelligent agent that we have here that's also kind of handy is, again, it's showing to students. This is based on course activity. So if a student has not accessed the course for the past 6 days, then they get an email that gets sent to them. And here is another part where we chose take action every time the agent is evaluated, meaning that, hey, if in 7 days they haven't logged in again in the course, they're gonna get another email about this. So this is where it's useful to have every time they haven't satisfied their criteria, and the rest is just an email. So for that. So I've showed a lot, and I see a few questions that came up, and I'll try to get to it. Okay, access intelligent agents. So to go back, you click on here, you would go to course admin, and you would scroll down to intelligent agents under communication. Oh, and it was already answered. And where is course admin? Okay, it's possible that you have to click this little drop-down arrow if you're in your course. If you're in another course, like it's really important that you make sure that you're in a role, that your role in the course is instructor or course designer. Because if you're a student in that course, then students basically can't see course admin. So that's, if you don't see it there, it's maybe because of the role, or you have to, yeah.
Teddy, sorry, it was me who had asked the question. I figured out with Francoise, but maybe there are other people who aren't aware. That little 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner, just above groups, when you click on edit this nav bar, it will bring you to multiple different icons. So people might want to take a look at what are potential other icons they'd like to access. Because that was my problem. I didn't have the course admin icon, and I didn't know what those features were.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, definitely. Course admin is something absolutely you want to make sure you have in your course. It generally comes by default, but if it was removed, for sure, that's something you wanna add, because otherwise there is no way that you can access the feature that I talked about. Actually, there are actually other ways, but like you can get to intelligent agents with class progress, but so you can use agents here. But,
so perhaps maybe, I don't know if everybody would benefit, but perhaps maybe what would be some of those ones that you would really want to see up there? Because it looks like you have at least 2 good rows that you can fill.
Yeah. So if I'm going to cover it quickly here, so you can tell here that there's a couple of copies, but the default ones are here, which is course reserves, lecture recording, and ones with quizzes. But the ones that if you're so you can toggle them. But if you're customizing them like we're doing now, and you're thinking, okay, groups are useful if you're creating groups. So groups is something that you definitely want to have if they're self-enrolling, for example. Zoom and lecture recordings, because of the nature of our online format nowadays, that's there by default. So you want to keep that. When you're creating your Zoom sessions, that'll be handy. And also the recordings that are going to come out of those Zoom sessions also will appear here. So that's also useful to have. And if anything else that you can upload in lecture recordings as well. It depends, again, if you use quizzes, that's really up to you if you use the quiz tool. In our cases, it's very likely that you would probably be having that and assignments. And you can order them, right? So I'm just clicking and dragging them based on how often I think the students will use it. So you can drag it and drop. The class list is only viewed by instructors, so you don't have to worry that students, or if you wonder if students can see that, they can't. It's only instructors can only see class list and course admin as well. Sorry, the students can't see those two. The instructors can see everything. The other thing, grades, absolutely. Students love seeing their grades in my courses, so there's something that you should keep there. Anything else? I mean, it really depends on what you use. There's so many other things, but like, for example, if you use announcements, I wouldn't necessarily add the announcements tool because it's already on the homepage. So it's really what you use, and this is also something to think about is maybe something that you may actually have it, they use a tool, but you don't want them to jump directly to the tool. You want them to access it via content and have them navigate your weekly modules, for example. So the navbar allows for jumping ahead, but if you really want to get them to focus on the different areas that they need to focus on, sometimes it's just easier to link to it in the content than to, like, for example, if you want them to do discussions, for example, and you just you could link them directly in the content. And so, but it's also useful to have it in the navbar because then they can see all their overall the discussions that they have in the course in case they're reviewing for the final or the midterm, something like that. It's a balancing act if you want, but yeah, absolutely. I hope that answers your question. Just wanted to see if there's any other questions about Intelligent Agent.
There is about 5 minutes left.
Yep.
So I think that we'll best to stay in the larger group, but if there's any other questions that anybody has, either about the topics that were covered or about anything else that might be helpful, please unmute and talk or put it in the chat, whatever is easiest for you. And I see Kate already has a finger up.
So I'm just, I didn't give an overview earlier, so just kind of a sneak preview that next week what we had planned to talk about were videos, how to share videos in my courses, quizzes, as well as the gradebook. So those are the broad strokes that we're going to look at next week.
And there are the webinars or the talks that were done by TLS with those links that are already there that I know I have some to catch up on. So in terms of planning everything out, etc. Any other questions, comments?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are we next, like, are we gonna also have a session about really truly how we operationalize peer grade? Like, there's the actual idea of peer grade, but then it's actually really doing it. And I don't know if anybody's an expert there.
So I don't know I don't know if there are when I've used like the program peer grade, is that what you're speaking about, or peer grading in general?
No, they're using the peer grade program. So there's a limited licenses. So if people are interested, they actually have to contact IT to request peer grade to be incorporated into myCourses. So I did that, and I'm just trying to set it up, but it's just more thinking through and making sure that you have all the checks. And
there is a couple of good YouTube videos, informative YouTube videos, to quote Carrie, that I have used to operationalize it, and then I also Teddy helped me through a lot of the things that I did in my course. I don't know if it's going to be covered in that kind of depth that you might need if it's something that you are planning on using. So I don't know whether it'd be better to create a to set up a meeting with the TLS folks to be able to really specify what you're doing in your class.
Sure.
If there's small things, I mean, for sure, those of us who have used it can definitely answer some of your questions. But if it's something very specific for your course, it could be maybe a better idea to make an appointment for that.
Sure. So if anybody else is using peer grade, just let me know. Maybe what we can just do is set up a little group email. And then
I think that's a great idea, Arjorie, because it's when you're playing with it together and you're sort of brainstorming and the application for large classroom or small group and whatnot. So that would be a great idea, sort of like our little community of practice for peer grade.
Just someone that you know that you can troubleshoot with, you know?
So Arjorie, I know TLS in some of the seminars they did earlier in the summer, one of them was called Peer Assessment with Peer Grade. So I just looked on their website. It doesn't look like they're offering it again, but the slides are there and the recording is there.
Yeah, so I did that one.
Yeah, it was very introductory, but for anyone who doesn't have that yet, that's available.
Yeah.
With the link that Teddy shared at the very beginning in the webinars. Okay.
And the company itself has like tutorial videos, etc., that I used to help me think through some of the things. One thing that I do, I think the kind of troubleshooting and the talking through that really Teddy was helpful with me was, how do you set up your groups and what makes the most sense for your groups? Is we have a couple of different, like there's a lot of different things that we're trying to think about when we're thinking about our groups. And so that was really helpful to kind of talk through the initial setup, and then that makes it easier for the rolling out with the students. So that way you're not going back and forth, oh, forget that one, do this one instead. Like, yeah.
It's also the, you know, like linking it to the grade book, and also deciding they're giving an individual review based on a group assignment, or do you want groups to give groups feedback? So it's just kind of all those little details, trying to think them through, and someone else who's in peer grade at the same moment as you might be very helpful, just to say, well, what did I do, what worked, and what can you try?
And I think, Teddy, correct me if I'm wrong, but peer grade does not link to the grade book. It has to, the grades would need to be manually transferred over.
Yeah,
Just as a heads up
you
for
can
you.
get an Excel printout that then you link with the comma delineated stuff. You could link it to your grade book, but
yeah,
it
it's not that
talking
sort of
to
simple
each other.
automated talking to each other.
Yeah.
If you want, we could let's just. I think the interest is definitely there. Amanda, if we can get together afterwards and maybe have like, because a couple of years ago I know we had folks that use PeerGrade as well give some feedback, and I think that'll be useful within this group where we can like I can do some of the advice for the setup, but also I think it's great to have like the feedback of what experiences that you had where like I don't know, students flagged something and what did you do with it. I think there's some things that it'll be good to have a real like instructor perspective from it without putting you on the spot.
Do we want to create a do we want to create like a community of practice like within the IOS whatever how many letters that is? I'm a little tired. To do PeerGrade stuff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and maybe it's also like, for example, we created a peer evaluation grid to give evaluation, you know, that then is going to be part of your assignment, and just deciding when you're going to distribute that survey and how and through what mechanism, and what should be your percentage for collaborative work for your group assignment. So those are just some like decisions that I had to think through. And like that grid that we created, well, we can just give it to you. So nobody else has to recreate and just adapt.
Yeah, and Francoise was asking in the chat, what's the maximum PeerGrade % you can have in your course? Do we know that?
I didn't use mine for points.
Oh, I see.
How much do you, Audrey?
I think it was 5, 15, and 25%. There was something about peer assessment in the TLS documents in an Excel spreadsheet. So, but then you have to also think about, well, how much is that assignment actually weighed?
Yeah, I see.
So it's just thinking it all through.
Okay.
So I guess if there's people who are interested, I don't know how best to proceed with the next part of this then. Would they email or stay in the chat or like send me an email saying they're interested, and then we can see about setting this up. The timeline on this before school starts for myself is very difficult, but I don't know if for other people who are using it. I'm not using it in the fall. So that's also, it might be more useful for people who are actually actively going to be using it in the fall to work together as you're doing it. And then as I'm available, I can pop in or out. And there's other people in the school who have used it. Oksana has used it, and I know there's other people who have used it as well who have.
Yeah. I'd like to use it this winter, but I'm not this fall, so but I'm interested to be part of the group. Yeah. Okay.
So maybe email me of the people there. Email Amanda if you want to do the PeerGrade group. Let's put it, we'll end it there, and then we'll see who's around, and we'll make meetings.
So huge thank you, Claire and Teddy, and apologies for going over a few minutes. I don't like when we do that, but it's hard to stop conversation because it's fantastic to have it. So, and thank you for everyone who attended. It's nice to be together and see your faces a little bit again. And we'll be back. I hope that people can join us again next Thursday, same bat time and channel. Anything else I'm missing? In the meantime, please feel free to reach out. I don't have all the answers, but I'm around. Yeah. All right.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
And we'll share the recording.
Yes.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks so much,
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Many thanks, Claire and Teddy.
Okay. Bye.